It really kind of all culminated in our final year project, where we're going to spend, basically what we have to do is we have to spend our last year working on a project, investing a lot of time, and we kind of have full reign over what we want to choose. And we have to do it kind of in an engineering fashion where we have to do the research, we have to read into literature, we have to test it out, and we actually have to be able to say at the end, is this something that actually improves the problem? What even is the problem? How are we going to measure it? And I just thought it was interesting. If I was going to have to spend, 8 months working on something, I might as well do it on something that I'm passionate about and interested in. So I thought about trying it out with writer's block, and it became kind of more broadly writer productivity near the end. But that was what we decided to try on out of some other options.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 314 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with David Olive Jr., who's a recent graduate from the University of Waterloo, Canada, with a passion for reading and writing fiction. As an aspiring writer, he and some classmates decided to try and tackle writing productivity as their final year design project. The result was Penspyre, a tool that utilizes AI to give them the writer contextualized writing prompts and help them be more productive. Now, David and I talk about his writing, the program at Waterloo University, and, of course, Penspyre. And that's all coming up later in this podcast. First, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. If you are looking for audiobook distribution, look no further than Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices has access to more than 43 retail and library channels. You can get your audiobooks into places like Spotify, to Audible, to Apple, to Nook, to Kobo, to Google, to dozens of library platforms, but also to Chirp Audiobooks, which is a phenomenal platform for discounted audiobooks run by the good folks at BookBub. If you're looking for a professional narrator to work with for your audiobook, you can also find them through Voices Marketplace, where Findaway Voices has curated thousands of professional narrators from around the world, and you can go check out their profiles, listen to samples, and then see if they're ideal for your writing project. Whether you need to create a file or whether you're looking for distribution, Findaway Voices offers you choice and options, and even better, control. So if you want to see how you can control your audiobook destiny, you can check out Findaway Voices over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. In terms of comments from recent episodes, for episode 313, Pioneering in Digital Indie Publishing with Peter M. Ball, Edwin Downward says, I admit this had the look of one of those episodes where I didn't know what I'd get out of it. Instead, you gave us an incredible talk about keeping our eyes and options open, even as the landscape is in a constant state of change. Very encouraging. Thanks, Eben. So glad that you enjoyed that conversation with Peter M. Ball. And I think, I failed to mention this in episode 313, but I think I had spotted Peter in the Wide for the Win Facebook group commenting about print book pricing, and I was really I found his perspective refreshing and so unlike other indie authors, and I thought I wanted to talk to him more, so that's why I reached out to talk to him. But also in this comment, which was left over at starkreflections.ca for episode 313, Edwin also said, your announcement, you're backing away from Twitter, had me a little dizzy at first. With so much happening on the platform, I'm beginning to see people I want to communicate with disappear at an accelerating rate. And again, thanks for that comment, Edwin. So I've been on Twitter since the earliest days, prior to smartphones, when it was those old phones way back when. Yeah, earliest days. And I've always enjoyed Twitter. Now, my comment in episode 13 about Twitter was more related to two things that were worrying me. The first was not being able to actually see things there any longer, due to their throttling back of how many tweets one can view without having to pay. So that had me a little bit worried. And whatever else may happen to the platform, as it seems really unstable lately. But the way things are going, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to maintain an account there without having to pay an exorbitant amount of money. And I'm not interested in doing that. So I'm not leaving Twitter. But I also recently upgraded to the new TweetDeck, which, oh my God, is a much, much crappier version than the one that I've been using and enjoying for years. And so with that update, I lost more of my visibility to Twitter. I just couldn't see the things I enjoyed following over the years and had built up. And trying to recreate them on the new version was horrible. Now, I did roll back to the previous incarnation of TweetDeck, which I love, and I don't have the time nor patience to figure out the new one. But I was really panicked because I set it up and I thought, oh no, I can't see anything anymore. How am I going to use this platform? So I will still be around on Twitter, Edwin, probably until the bitter end. For comments, of course, you can at me on Twitter. I may or may not see it. We'll see what happens in the future. You can always leave comments over at starkreflections.ca. You can email me, mark@markleslie.ca. In terms of personal update, the final work on the layout for the print books for Die Hard is going. I mean, the ebook itself the book itself, the content is done, locked and loaded, etc. It launches on Thursday, July 20th, which is the 35th anniversary of the release of the movie Die Hard, and it's called Yippee-Ki-Yay Mother Bleeper. And it'll be available in a mass market sized paperback that will be the exact same size, 4.25 by 7 inches, exact same size as the Canadian mounted, and I purposely made it close to the same page count. It's a bit longer. It's only about 200 pages, so it'll be available in ebook. It'll be available in that mass market size paperback, that small paperback size. But there'll also be a hardcover available. So I'm just finalizing the formatting for the cover wrap for the paperback as well as for the hardcover. Now, interestingly enough, the formatting of the paperback for the Canadian mounted was relatively easy because all I had to do was parody the original cover, which is what I did. And in this particular case, I'm not parodying any cover. It's an original cover with artwork by Nicolette Jones, Canadian artist Nicolette Jones. And so I can do whatever I want on the cover. So I'm kind of curious to where I'm going to go with that. But that's work I have to get done and get loaded up so that the paperbacks paper cover can be live on July 20th. And in terms of other personal update, lots of stuff going on with the master's program that I'm in, as well as with a little bit of travel, combining that with some rest and relaxation, with some camping. So lots of fun stuff going on there. But that's it for my personal update. Why don't we get into this interview with David, who I was fortunate enough to meet through a project the engineering students were doing at the University of Waterloo. But I'll let David and I explain that to you. So here's my interview with David Olive Jr. Hey, David, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Glad to be here.
So before we dig into the high technology and the cool project that introduced us, I want you to give my listeners a little bit of a background about David the writer. When did this all start for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think it starts the way it usually starts for a lot of people, and it actually started with reading mainly.
Okay.
back when I was a kid, I think I used to read paperback books a lot. I remember my grandparents used to give us back when you used to buy books like in person. they
Yeah, yeah.
used to give me gift cards for my birthday, and we would go and I'd buy a book or two, and then I'd read them, and that was one of my favorite pastimes. I didn't do a lot of activities outside. I was kind of a homebody.
Okay.
Still am, but I did a lot of reading as a kid, a lot of fantasy. I think some of the first series I read were like Legend of Drizzt, like fantasy series by I think it was R.A. Salvatore.
Okay.
Um, and then uh, and then from there, I think I kind of just got hooked. So I've been reading ever since. My dad got me like one of those kind of like I think it was like a Kindle reader or like a Kobo reader. So
Right.
I started reading online some more through
Yeah.
that. I think I read probably over like I don't know like 100 fantasy books and a few sci-fi here and there
Right.
growing up, and then I kind of moved on into reading kind of web novel stuff. So I read a
Okay.
lot of translated web novels. So that's really different style of writing. It's usually a lot of chapters, and the quality isn't the best, but usually it has a
What do
lot
you
of
mean
quantity.
translated? Translated from
Yeah,
another language or translated from another format, like a graphic
yeah.
novel? No.
No, generally it's translated from another language. So usually it's written in either like Japan or Korea or Chinese web novels, and then they're translated over to English,
Okay.
and then you can read them there. So the language it's a little bit not as good as like somebody who maybe be writing like a book full time, getting paid like a lot to do it.
Right.
But I think I honestly just love stories, and that was another place I could consume stories for pretty cheap. So I read a lot of that too.
Well, it reminds me of something that's really, really important is sometimes it's not necessarily like, oh, this writer writes like Hemingway or anything like that. It's just a really good story. And
Yeah.
if it's a great story, we just fall into it, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's honestly what I got hooked on is just all the stories, especially the ones that kind of make you feel something, either
Right.
like frustrated, happy, or sad or something. So I really love those type of stories. Recently I've been getting into mainly I like more so the style of kind of like grimdark fantasy. So I've
Okay.
been reading The First Law by Joe Abercrombie, and then some other ones like that. So ones where everyone's kind of in the morally gray, and there's no one who's really very good or bad. I think as I got older, I kind of started leaning towards enjoying that a little bit more. I don't know
You
why.
realize the reality, right?
Yeah.
um, so I'm curious, like it was a lot of fantasy, probably initially
Mhm.
sword and sorcery kind of fantasy, epic fantasy, whatever, and then you're moving across the speculative genres, but still very
Mhm.
fantasy focused. And then at what point did you sit down and say, hey, I like story, I want to write stories?
Yeah, for sure. It's actually really funny because like going throughout high school, I honestly hated like English and like writing. So it was
Yeah,
kind
but
of
look what they made you read.
yeah. It wasn't really the style of what I enjoyed. It was things like Shakespeare and maybe leaning more towards nonfiction or areas that I didn't find as interesting. But
Yeah.
I think it was really honestly around probably mid-university is when I decided it was around like one internship. I had some free time, and I was like, hey, maybe I should try writing. I like all these stories, and I kind of have a mind that likes to wander when I'm sleeping or walking or something like that. And I was
Okay.
like, maybe I can try and put this down and then see if I can write something that maybe other people will like too.
So how did that go? I mean, were you writing specifically for certain markets or target audiences? Were you sending short stories away? Was it web novel stuff? Like what was the
Mhm.
where were you generate or were you just generating it for yourself so far?
Yeah. I think at first I didn't really know like where to go, where to put things. So I think at first I actually started putting it on Wattpad, which
Oh, of course,
yeah.
Canadian company. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Which honestly probably isn't the best for if you're writing fantasy, which I was. Wattpad is more focused, I want to say, towards romance or categories of romance.
Well,
But
every online genre, like romance, just
yeah,
dominates everything for readers. So, but come
yeah,
on,
yeah,
there's lots. I put thrillers and horror on Wattpad. So come on, there's other genres there too.
yeah. So I wrote it and I put it there, and I might have got a few reads. I mean, it was my first book, so obviously the writing
It
was
was it was
very
a full length
far.
like a full length
It
book.
it was a very short full length book. I think it came out to around 60,000 words, which for a
Oh, that's
novel
pretty good.
is
Well, for
yeah.
fantasy, that's short,
Yeah,
epic
yeah,
fantasy, but that's
yeah,
that's not bad. 50 to 80,000 words,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I got in over my head in the first book because like usually when I read, I like to read like very long series. I don't like to read standalones. So I
Right.
think in my mind I had a story that was for a really long series, but I think like with many things, when you start writing, you kind of realize how much work is actually involved into writing something that length.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first work. Currently working on the second one now that I have some free time again.
In the
Uh,
same series or a second novel, like standalone?
no, yeah, it's a second one. It's another one I'm trying to do. Unfortunately, it's also looking like it might be a series, but I'll try to come up with a more satisfying ending than the last one.
Yeah.
I kind of ended the last one abruptly, I think, because I kind of ran out of steam, like 60,000 words in.
Right.
But yeah, I've also been trying to read more on how to improve my craft,
Right.
just because I think it's something that I have to do if I want to be able to really communicate the stories that are in my mind.
Of course. Yeah. Now, did you participate in? Because I know you're a recent graduate, so obviously
Yeah.
you've been very busy
Yeah.
doing other things. But
Yeah.
did you ever participate in like NaNoWriMo or Camp NaNoWriMo or any of those motivational where you sit down and just try and get the words out?
No, I think like I know we'll get into it more in the later, but I think doing Penspyre and having the opportunity to chat with a bunch of writers and see like what they recommend and the things they talk about has kind of opened up my eyes to the
Okay.
world of writing and things to try there. So I think I missed the opportunity for the last one, but I think for the next one I'll give it a try.
All right.
Um, yeah.
So you'd mentioned, being frustrated, not really enjoying English in high school.
Mm.
You're at a well-known, world-class, prestigious university. You didn't take English language and literature. What were you studying at Waterloo University?
Yeah, I was studying one of the engineering, so I was studying systems design engineering. So it's a
Okay.
lot it's a lot focused on more technical stuff and maybe like designing systems and things like user research and things like that. There is a little bit on like communication, but it's not it's not in the stream of writing novels for sure.
No, I know the communications course for engineers is a completely different one than the
Yeah.
people in the business program would get, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about that merger, because what I'm really
Mm.
fascinated with is obviously you have the systems engineer background and a passion for writing, and like chocolate and peanut butter, the two of them suddenly found themselves together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really kind of all culminated in our final year project where we're going to spend basically what we have to do is we have to spend our last year working on a project, investing a lot of time, and we kind of have full reign over what we want to choose. And we have to do it kind of in an engineering fashion where we have to do the research, we have to read into literature, we have to test it out, and we actually have to be able to say at the end, is this something that actually improves the problem? What even is the problem? How are we going to measure it? And I just thought it was interesting if I was gonna have to spend, 8 months working on something. I might as well do it on something that I'm passionate about and interested in. So I thought about trying it out with writer's block, and it became kind of more broadly writer productivity near the end. But
Yeah.
that was what we decided to try on out of some other options.
Because I remember the first meeting I had with you and the team,
Mhm.
and it was specifically questions about writer's block and how. So let's talk a little bit about that process, right? So
Yeah.
the problem was initially you were thinking, okay, writer's block is a thing that we've heard
Mhm.
about, that
Yeah.
maybe you've experienced yourself.
Yeah.
And then you had the team together, and you started the research. So there's a hypothesis, there's a research.
Mhm.
What was the problem that you initially identified?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, we looked at a bunch of different problems, but for the writing space specifically, I think we started out asking broadly, like, what problems do you face throughout the writing process? And there was a bunch of different things that came up. There was things around like publishing, like getting people to read my work, and then obviously some large ones there. But then there was also the aspect around like actually being able to finish like what you're writing and get that done. So that's something that came up a lot throughout all of the people that we talked with. And I think it's something that all writers kind of face throughout the process. So that was something that we looked at, and we looked at some of the other ones, and we looked at our time frame of 8 months, and we are looking at what can we actually build something for and test, near the end, are we actually solving a problem? And then we settled on the writing block one for the time frame that we had.
Wow. So What did you do? You hired a mystical muse and you asked the muse to go float around behind the heads of, right? Because that's what engineers do, is you could look into the mists, right?
Yeah. It was actually a very much more down to earth approach. The system design engineering approach is really just a lot of like talking to people. Honestly, we talked to a bunch of people in the Cambridge authors writing group. We talked to yourself. We talked to a lot of peers who were in a creative writing class. So just honestly, a lot of just talking to people, and we also did a little bit of literature reviews. It's actually a very unique problem to do. I want to say more academic level literature reviews in the writing space, especially for creative writing, because it's not a lot of research in the space specifically, because it's such a very unique experience and abstract experience for everyone. It's very hard to get research that holds up in that space.
So you came up with this. You had like an advisor, right? This
Mhm.
a team of you working together, and
Yeah,
then you interviewed writers. You found,
yeah,
okay, creativity, getting the work done, writer's block. How are we going to help them? We're going to build a
yeah,
better pen. We're going to build a better keyboard, right? Like, that's you think
yeah.
about engineering. How are we going to do this? You guys tapped into something else, didn't you?
Yeah. So we applied one of the concepts we learned throughout a program. One of the things we learned is a method called Google Sprint, and it's something that's applied in industry. It's basically you take 5 days and you spend time doing something specific each day. So the first thing we did on the first day is we mapped out all the different problems that writers had, and then we decided to focus on one area, which was the writer's block or writer's productivity. And then the second day, we each go into our separate corners in whatever places we live. And then we kind of draft up, how might we go about solving that problem? And then we came back together as a team, and then we looked at all of our drafts for solutions, and they were all different. And there was a bunch of different stuff up there. And then we kind of listed out the pros and cons, kind of judge each other's drafts, and like listed our concerns for each of them or what we liked about all of them. And then at the end, what we did is we actually created a prototype of it, which you never got to see, but we showed to some. I don't know if we showed it to you actually, but we created a prototype that was basically it was man behind the mirror. So it was kind of a inside Google Docs. We had somebody who was a commenter, and we named them like Penspyre. And then what they would do is, as you were typing, we would go at this time we had settled on an AI solution, and now we wanted to just quickly test to see if it had some potential.
Right.
So what we would do is we would just have people right inside the doc, and then someone on another monitor would type the same thing into some AI and then generate it, and then quickly copy paste it over whenever they were stuck, just to simulate something before actually having
Oh,
invested
wow.
resources to build
Okay.
it. Yeah, yeah,
That's fascinating that you took that
yeah,
sort of approach of using the technology, but yeah, sort of
yeah.
taking it together.
Yeah, it's all about validation before investing like many hours
Right,
into
right.
something. Yeah.
Okay, so then eventually you did come up with what became known as Penspyre.
Mhm.
What is this, and how is it something that a writer would use?
Yeah, for sure. It's essentially, it basically gives you AI writing prompts whenever you're stuck.
Okay.
So whenever you're stuck, it will either, let you know, hey, do you want a writing prompt? And then what you can do there is it will automatically read what's ever in your Google Docs. So it's basically an extension specifically for Google Docs, but think of it more broadly eventually for, any writing environment that you would write in. And then what it does is it automatically reads context from your document. So you don't have to copy paste anything over. You don't have to tell it what to focus on, or what it should know. It can already read that automatically.
Okay.
And then you can generate basically continuations, you could generate descriptions. And the main purpose here is really to give you kind of a skeleton that you can work from. It's not really to give you something that you could take word for word. We don't think AI is really there where you would take it for word, and we don't think a lot of writers would want to take it word for word from talking to them. So it's
Right.
really meant to give you a skeleton that you can kind of morph to what you need and really help you get the ball rolling. Because I think what we found is that a lot of writers said that once they get the ball rolling, then that's when the issue kind of gets solved of writer's block.
So I want to get into some of the specifics, because I think some of
Yeah.
the tools are really neat. But I remember in one of the last sessions I did with you
Mhm.
guys, where you felt like you were in your lab coats with the clipboards, watching me
Yeah.
in the virtual room while I
Yeah.
was actually doing a raw writing, and I did writing for 20 minutes without any assistance, sort of
Mhm.
raw, well, assistance, right? Raw,
Yeah.
not analog, but
Yeah,
raw
yeah.
writing right from the fingers and brain here. And then
Yeah.
I did another session where I had the Penspyre app enabled.
Mhm.
And so did you, you must have done this study with a number of, did you find
Mhm.
a consistent pattern of being able to get the ball rolling one way or the other?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I have the results actually. Just give me a second to pull them up. I can discuss them with you a little bit. I just have to
Of course.
find them here. Yeah, so we looked at a number of different metrics. So to begin with, just because of time constraints, I think we only tested with around 7 writers. And
Right.
obviously these sessions took a long time. I think with you, we were probably there for an hour and a half or 2 hours or something,
Yeah.
talking with you. So it's a lot of time to invest for both the writer and for our team.
Yeah, no,
So
like 7 writers, that's full
yeah.
week right there, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we're only able to test with 7, so the results aren't too statistically significant. That was one of our suggestions going forward with this project is do some more long-term testing with a lot more writers.
Right.
But I can tell you the results that we had for these sessions, for the metrics that we looked at. So one of the key metrics here, I think that a lot of people might be interested in is in word count. So this is one of the metrics that we looked at.
Yeah.
So without the aid, I think the mean word count came out to around 544 words in that 20-minute session.
Okay.
And then I think with the aid, the mean came out to around 654 words. So people using Penspyre were found to, write more words per session,
Okay.
which is interesting. And then we did look at some other ones, like if you looked at that number in terms of percent, because each writer kind of wrote a different number of words in the starting session and then after, because everyone kind of writes at a different speed. So if we kind of change that number over in terms of percent and just assume the first session was at 100%,
Right.
usually people generally wrote around 15% more with the tool per the 20-minute session.
Okay.
That's what we found. But obviously this testing was like taken out of people's normal environment. So you got to take it with a grain of salt for what we did here.
Right.
We looked at some other runs around like the number of blocks and the total time blocked, but we didn't really see solid results here. And I think that's also because people were still learning how to use the tool when we were giving it to them. Because I
Yeah.
think in our 20-minute session, you didn't even get a chance to try out all the different features. So
Yeah.
people were still spending some time learning the tool as well. But there were some positive results in terms of that. And in terms of perceived craft, I don't know if you remember, but we also asked you about like how you felt about the writing session after. And in terms of that, there wasn't really any dip in terms of feelings around the writing session. People generally enjoyed it the same or even a little bit more.
Oh,
So that was
so you
something
thought
interesting.
people might feel less
Yeah, yeah.
excited because, oh, I had help.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't ride the bike myself. The training wheels were on or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, I do remember it one part in the Penspyre assisted writing I was doing. I had a cafe and I needed to populate it with people, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to waste time just coming up with stuff. So I
Yeah.
asked Penspyre to give me a list of people who'd be in a New York cafe or whatever. And I think
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
took, I don't know, maybe 5 suggestions. I think I took 3 and then I changed 2 of them a little bit. But it was
Mhm.
great because I had something to start with. I didn't leave the document to go browsing the internet looking,
Yeah.
which would have
Yeah.
taken 20 minutes probably.
Yeah.
And in 2 minutes, I was able to stick these people in. And then interestingly enough, one of the characters that it suggested and I modified,
Mhm.
I'm going to use in a different way. It almost created this character that I didn't even know existed suddenly. And now this is going to be another scene later on. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that weird inspiration that just came from nowhere. So
Yeah,
that's
Mark, I totally remember that moment because I think that was the moment that your face kind of went like, oh, this is kind of cool. And we were all like, oh, this is cool. He likes it.
yeah.
I do remember that moment. And I do use that feature a lot. I've been the new book I've been writing over the past around month or so every day. I've been using Penspyre with it as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a tool that I kind of made for myself as much as I made for the project. So
Right.
I've been using it, and That's one of the features that I liked a lot. There was a bunch of different points, like one where I needed names of alcohol that people might drink in a desert, and it gave
Yes.
me a list of very interesting alcohols that exist in real life in that kind of environment, and
Right.
gave me short descriptions of them, and I think that was really useful. So that's definitely a favorite feature of mine as well.
So what are some of the other functionalities or tools? Because again, we barely dipped into them, and I really haven't played with it
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
So what are some of the other options that writers can take advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. So the first one is continue the story. This one you can just ask Penspyre to continue the story for you. You can select like what you want to focus on, if you want to focus on action or dialogue or inner thoughts of characters, and then you could check what kind of tone you want, if you want something happy, humorous, sad, kind of very basic customization there. And then it will just continue the story looking at what you've already written, and it's kind of thinking about where can the story like perceivably go next. And I actually use that feature a lot as well when I'm in a spot and I know somewhere else I need to be, but I kind of need to fill in this gap in between,
Okay.
and I'm not sure where to go next. So
Right.
that's kind of when I use that function a lot.
Like a bridge scene or a buffer or something.
Yeah, more like almost like a filler. I say this one is more of a filler functionality, and then oftentimes I find myself just liking the structure and stuff that it spits out, and then really morphing it into what I envision from there. And
Right.
usually it just helps me get some ideas. There's another one, link the story. This one is specifically you put in where you want the story to go, and then it will
Oh,
try to link
yeah.
where you're at right now to that point. So I think one time I wrote in stuff like for example, I think the princess well, the story I'm writing has a princess in it, and the princess and like a merchant need to talk, but they just met, so we need to get from just meeting to talking, and like how can we get to that point. So it's useful for bridging the gap in that aspect.
They see, I love that because that's a spot where I'm constantly like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know this. No idea how they're gonna get over
Yeah.
there. Right.
Yeah. 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 I think, yeah, I've begun to find you kind of think in like events when you're writing, you
Right.
know, you kind of think in events, and then you have to fill in like from one event to another. So that's
Right.
interesting. And then the last one is describe. This one's pretty useful. You just pick out a person, place, or thing that you've written about, and
Right.
then you can ask it to describe it in terms of one of the five senses. So like sight, smell, touch, or something. So if you're in a new setting and you want, how might I describe this setting? You can use it like that. Or how might I describe this person or this thing? You can use it like that. I find myself using that one, especially when I'm entering new settings or meeting new characters.
Oh wow. So that again, it's just a great way to kind of I like to think of it as working with a co-author who
Yeah,
has quick access to lots of information,
yeah,
who can go do that quick research for me. Which means I
exactly.
don't leave the document because when I've written in sprints and I was writing in a sprint, I mean, actually writing with you guys watching,
Mhm.
like I couldn't go get a coffee and I couldn't
No.
get I'm gonna go look at cat videos. So I mean, one of the powerful tools was it reminded me, hey, 20 minutes, go. Well, I better be productive because I can't do anything
Yeah,
else. And
yeah.
so having Penspyre there to say, okay, Penspyre, go get me some things. I can keep going, right? If only you could get me coffee.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, maybe in a future update. I don't know.
So, I mean, I'm one of the few lucky authors that got to test this while it was in production and give you guys feedback along the way as you continue to improve it and improve it.
Mhm.
You have.
Mhm.
Congratulations. This is something that's now available for other people to use, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think we put it out for Google Docs. We have a stable version for Google Docs with everything I just described. So it's available as an extension that you can install on Chromium browsers, and then you can use it inside of Google Docs just like you would like Grammarly or something like that. And then you could use it all right there. Because another thing that we found talking to writers is that generally, like you mentioned, they don't like having to switch tabs because they kind of lose their flow. So we like to have everything right there in the document with you, so you don't have to kind of break your flow.
Oh wow, that's so it is available to the public and people can find it on Google. We'll obviously
Mhm.
have links in the show notes to Penspyre and how they can check it out.
Yep.
I'm hoping that when we go offline after we finish this interview that you can maybe do a demo for me that I can share with my patrons as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. So let's talk about that. You're working on as you've graduated from the program now.
Yeah, I just finished. Yeah.
Congratulations. The project is complete. The team is satisfied. Hopefully your advisors thumbs up on it.
Yeah,
Obviously
it was all good. Yeah.
it's in the world. They said it's
Yeah.
ready for prime time. Awesome. But so you're working on this other novel now, and you said you're using Penspyre. How
Mm.
obviously you wanted to have a tool like that, so that's a great
Yeah.
motivation. But
Yeah.
how's that been going for you?
I think honestly it's been really great. Just I remember there were times when I was developing it while I was using it. So there was a week at the start where I used it, and then there was a week where we had to take it down because we were doing some improvements. And I noticed throughout that week that I was kind of struggling meeting my word count every day because I had become so used to using Penspyre. So I think I've kind of become a little bit reliant on it when I'm stuck.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I use to encourage myself to keep going when I don't know where to go.
But there's something that I want to highlight, and this is there's a huge debates running
Hmm.
throughout the author community about technology, and the machines are going to replace us, and people are just going to be able to spit out books without any talent. But I
Mhm.
mean, the reality you discovered as someone who helped build this is
Mhm.
that it's a really cool tool, but it ain't going to do the writing. You're going to still
No.
have to do the hard work yourself, right?
Yeah, 100%. That was another thing that we measured in the experiment that we did before, where you tested out. One other thing we looked at is the percent of prompts that people use without making changes. And I think the percent of prompts people use without making changes was pretty low in those tests. It was only around 15% of prompts did people take word for word throughout
Wow.
those tests. Uh,
15% of the prompts they
yeah,
just said,
only
yeah, good
yeah.
enough. Let's move on.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's one of the things that we did, and one of the things that our advisor really wanted us to focus on was encouraging writers to make these prompts their own. So we've included features where we kind of check the uniqueness of prompts, and we kind of tell you when you should probably be making them and
Oh
changing
yeah,
them to
that's right.
yourself.
So you can say like the
Yeah.
unique, so you can actually make sure that it's your own. But you even one of the things I liked is when you do the prompt in that little
Yeah.
side window, I can adjust it and then apply.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
great feature.
you can make your edits. That's what I found myself doing is I get the prompt and then I find myself writing like like 300 words in the side there because I
Yeah,
kind of get carried away editing the skeleton that it's given me.
yeah,
And then when you click finish, it will give you a new score and tell you if you've made enough changes that it looks like it's really unique writing, and then you can use it from there. So it's really a tool that it's not going to do everything for you. It's really just giving you a skeleton, and I think that's kind of the theme that we're going to be taking forward with making improvements to the tool for how can we really empower you as the writer and not really do the job for you because it just won't be as good. Period.
right. Awesome, awesome. In terms of your own writing, now obviously you've got an engineering degree. There's probably
Hmm.
something out there in terms of the day job, which whatever.
Yeah.
But writing is something that you're going to continue alongside.
Yeah. I think that's one of my long-term plans. Recently I read On Writing by Stephen King, a memoir of his craft. Uh,
Excellent book. Yeah.
yeah, Roman passed that to me. He read that for some research when we were doing this project. So
Is Roman a writer or just on the team?
he does a little bit of short story writing on
Okay.
his own from time to time. I don't think he's too big on the novel writing, but he said he really enjoyed Stephen King's On Writing. So I read
And
it, and it was a
yeah,
greve read.
yeah. I've reread it about 6 times over the
Yeah.
years. It's just one of the ones to come back to and go, oh yeah, it's not all easy.
Yeah. I think, yeah, honestly, the biggest takeaway that I took from that book is that to kind of improve my craft, I think his main things, he had his whole toolbox, but I think the main things were you have to read a lot and write a lot. So, reading a lot, I'm totally good with that. I can do that
Yeah,
for fun. Writing a lot is something I'm going to have to build into discipline. So,
yeah.
I'm very down to earth in understanding that it will be a long time before my writing really gets to the point where people can really appreciate the story that I'm trying to tell.
Right.
But I think that's something every writer has to go through.
Awesome. Do you have works that you're willing to share? And is there like a website for you where
Mm.
people can check out some of your writing?
Yeah, for sure. I actually I kind of got a little bit too techie into it, and I made my own website just because I got inspired by a bunch of people's website. But yeah, I can share that with you after. Right now, it just has my my previous first work and the current one that I'm writing right
Okay.
now. I kind of update that weekly.
For audio only people, can you kind of read out the URL?
Yeah, for sure. It's grimdark books.com.
All right, cool. And then of course I'll have links in the show notes so people can check that out. What
For
about what
sure. I
about
appreciate it.
what about Penspyre? Is there a place where people can find it? Do they just go to the Google App Store, or how do they do that?
Yeah, you can either go to penspyre.com, that's Penspyre, Penspyre. It's a little bit odd spelling,
Okay.
.com, or you can just search that up in the Google Chrome App Store and it should come up. It's just a little purple icon with a little pen inside of it.
Any future plans that you're allowed to talk about for the pen you and this Penspyre team?
I think right now we're really just going to be looking at the feedback we get from the first group of writers that try it out long term. And I think really it's kind of a tool since I'm the one who's using it and I have a big part in the team as well. And I'm also growing as a writer. I think it's a sort of tool that will grow with me as I write and find what works best for the craft actually. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a writer and actually working on the tool at the same time.
Awesome, David. So just last few questions. I'm just gonna use you as a mentor for other writers or people thinking about AI tools and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So let's start with the writing. And this is something you've obviously been a reader a long time, been interested in
Mm.
writing for a long time. You've written a book, you're working on another book. What would you advise to somebody who wants to be a writer, hasn't really given it a shot yet? What's some of the best advice you can offer them?
I think the best advice I could offer them is that it's kind of a marathon and not a sprint. So I think you should just find the word count that you can do comfortably per day, and then just stick to that consistently for a long time, for a month, for a couple months at least, and then see where you're at the end of that. And I think you'll be pretty proud with what you come out of that if you're just consistent with it. And I think that's as far as advice that I can give right now. And obviously, maybe read On Writing by Stephen King because that's a great read.
Excellent advice. Okay, now for those writers who are terrified, they hear AI, they think the world is coming to an end, Skynet's
Yeah.
going to take over and kill us all the horrible things in the world are going to happen.
Right.
Is there anything you could say that might alleviate some of that anxiety?
I think I think you don't need to be worried. I think one thing to just keep in mind is that you are the customer for AI, so it's always going to be built to help you do your job and not replace you. Otherwise, nobody would pay them for the AI. So I think that's just one thing, one important thing to keep in mind. And I think the other important thing to keep in mind is that while the AI is very good, and especially if you're coming in as a newbie to writing, and the craft, it may seem like the AI can write just as good as you or sometimes better than you. But in all honesty, that's not true. Just the way it's just the way the AI works. It's very good at spitting out things that look good. But in terms of long form fiction or long form writing, in terms of novels where the plot spans really far, you're going to be the mastermind there and really have control. And the AI just doesn't have grasp enough to build something that's equal to what we see out there today.
Awesome. Thanks, David, so much for sharing, for your wisdom, insights, and for creating this great tool for writers.
No problem.
I just want to reflect on a couple things from the interview with David. Now, the first thing is just for the purpose of helping remind us about the encroaching AI. So this is from somebody who created an AI writing tool, right? An engineer. Now, he's a writer, but he's also an engineer. David reminds us all the work they put into this tool. It is not something that just spits out text that you can use. It spits out ideas, it spits out placeholders, it spits out lists, it spits out information, it spits out descriptions, but it's not something that you can just leverage. It needs to be refined, it needs to be adjusted, it needs to be crafted, it needs to be curated, it needs to be coached, it needs to be molded, it needs to be shaped. All those things that a writer does, particularly because you need to shape it and craft it in your voice. Yes, I have seen evidence of people creating stuff with AI, but it sucks. It's horrible. I mean, the stuff that's raw and doesn't get curated and crafted and molded and sculpted the way that a writer does. It's just crappy, or even potentially crappier, than the junk that somebody who thinks they can write and just slap anything down on paper starts off with without actually putting effort into the craft. So, if you are a writer who's concerned about these tools, don't be concerned about the tools that some worthless hack who doesn't know anything about writing is going to use. Yes, it's a tool that's going to help people with ideas for books that they've never been able to write. That's fantastic that it's going to help writers get over the hurdle, get over that hump, and get some stuff written. It may help some writers who are not quite there yet get to become a little bit better. But it's definitely nowhere near being able to spit out finely polished prose. That's something that still has to be done through hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, but this tool is just another tool that writers can use to help. The other reflection is just I am working with a co-author on a solo project that she's working on, and I'm the first reader and not the editor, but basically giving her developmental commentary early before it goes to a real editor. And we've decided to move over to Google Docs, and I haven't really written in Google Docs before, but the next book in the Canadian Werewolf series, which I've already done some experimental writing earlier this year when I chatted with David, that was in May of 2023, I did write a few scenes from that novel, and I used Penspyre in the tests that they did. I wrote raw, and then I wrote with Penspyre, and it helped improve my ability to get through a scene faster. So I'm probably going to use Penspyre in the writing of the Canadian werewolf novel Only Monsters in the Building, which now that the Die Hard book is out the door, I can actually start focusing on getting that book done, because that book is coming out in February or March 2024, sometime in there, in that area. So anyway, so for helping me with the writing of that novel, I'm gonna try for the first time, because I'm mostly writing Word. I'm gonna see if I can do it in Google Docs, and see how Penspyre can help me with that, because I've purchased a few different tools, I've played around with them, but I haven't actually done anything for more than, the 20-minute sprints and stuff like that. So I'm really curious to get in there and experiment, because I'm positive. I saw evidence that it helped me, and I'm positive it's going to help me as a writer. And I want to maintain that positivity. I want to maintain the ability to be open to leveraging new tools in the market. Now, speaking of new tools in the market, this Penspyre is available in the Google Chrome app. I don't think you see it in the App Store on your Android phone, but you see it for the Google Chrome extension in Chrome on your PC, for example. And it is $10 a month, and it's unlimited. So for $10 a month, basically $120 a year, it is unlimited, and it's not limited in terms of, like, some of the AI tools I have access to, 11 Labs for voice, is limited to so many characters per month with the subscription that I have. In this case, it's $10 a month. It's unlimited. However, for you dear listeners of the Stark Reflections podcast, if you're interested, you can use the code STARK, STARK, at checkout, and you can get it for $5 a month, which is really cool, because that's half of $110. There you go. I'm not doing the math in my head. No, you can't trick me that way. In any case, so if you are interested in checking it out, now you can check it out for free, of course. I think the first 30 days, where there's a trial period, we can just test it and play with it for free. And I do encourage you, if you've never played with a tool like that, to just try it out and check out the prompts, check out the descriptions using the different senses, which is going to be really handy when I think about that for a werewolf, right? The werewolf, because he's very dependent upon so many of his senses, smell and sound, etc. And so, yeah, I do recommend you check that out. But that's kind of it for this episode. I do want to remind my patrons, David and I, when we finished the interview, he stayed on, and we recorded a video, so it was a little bit more of a, not tutorial, but a little bit more of a walkthrough of some of the stuff for Penspyre, so you can check it out and see. It's probably gotten better since we recorded that, but this is just giving you more insight into what's going on, and that'll be over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And a huge thank you to everyone who supports this podcast over at Patreon, where you get access to additional content that not everyone else gets, because you're awesome patrons who are supporting the podcast there. If you want to support the podcast, of course, you can always leave a review over on whatever podcatcher you listen to podcasts on, or share this podcast with someone that you think would find value in it. But that's it for episode 314. That's it for me doing the reflection. That's it for the endnotes and all the things that makes up this episode of the podcast. I will be back next week with episode 315. And so, until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good. Okay, Penspyre, give me some sort of response for... let's just go with the one that I crafted myself. And good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.